Hello, Michael here with another Renderman 22 tutorial. Today we're going to be having a look at normal maps, and I'm going to be doing mine in ZBrush, so I'll just quickly show you how to start with that if you are using ZBrush. Otherwise, if you've already got the maps created, basically the same process with some slight differences. So if you've got your model, I've got a higher poly model here. It's not amazing, but it'll do. So I'm just going to set it to its lowest subdivision. I've already UV mapped it. If I want to do the normal map, I'm just going to go to normal maps. These are my settings: adaptive off, smooth UV on, smooth normals on, and tangent on. And then I'm going to, if you want to actually define the resolution of this map, you do it in the UV settings. I'm going to make it a 4K map. And we'll go back to this normal map, and we will create normal map, which has been completed. Now we want to go to, we want to clone the normal map, which is just going to send it up to the texture palette, and then we're going to flip V, because ZBrush makes textures upside down compared to most other programs. Then we're going to export that, and we will export it as a TIFF. And I've done a couple of tests, and this one's going to be called normal map 3. And then you would obviously also export your object. I've already exported mine. Now, something worth noting is the poly count. The poly count is important for normal maps depending on how much detail you want to get out of it. If you're using normal maps with displacement maps, the poly count isn't as important. If you're just using the mesh with a normal map, then you're going to want a higher poly count if you want to get extra detail out of the normal map. Normal maps can only go so far for getting detail. They're really designed for, they're not really designed for close-ups unless you're using them with a displacement map, or if you're just trying to get some surface variation. But yeah, the heavy lifting is done by a displacement map. These will just give you a little bit of extra detail. So let's jump over into Maya, and I'm just going to bring my object in. And it's giant, apparently. That's fine. We'll just zoom out. All right, so yeah, you can see this is probably this is much higher than what I'd use for production normally, but just this is the only thing I had handy for creating a normal map out of. So what we'll do is we'll chuck a light in, and then we're going to apply a Renderman shader to it, a Hypershade editor. Alright, so now we're going to create a normal map node. So we'll just hit tab, type normal, and get Pixar normal map. It's going to select that node, hit 2 on the keyboard, and then run the result in to the bump normal. Now we're going to open up our normal texture. If you have it set to textures, it's only going to look for Pixar texture files. Images will sometimes find things. I think only TIFFs and bitmaps and things like JPEGs and things like that. I did it as a TIFF, so I will just select any and select normal map 3, which is the one that we just created. Now we have to adjust a couple of settings. We want to flip X and Y. You've got an atlas style here, which you can set to ZBrush. I found that it actually doesn't really work the best, so I'm going to leave that unselected. And then we'll just do a quick render here. Actually, that's running really slow. I'm going to do that in the IPR window. All right, so as you can see, the normal map is working as intended. I've just brought that normal map up so we can see the settings. So what we want to look for when you create a normal map is we can see that we've got the light on the left hand side there. So just check that the light is hitting the correct side of like crevices and things like that. So you can see the little skull thing, it's casting a shadow to the right, light source is on the left, so that makes sense. If I turned off flip X, you can see that it sort of got a weird thing happening up here. And if I turn off Y, you can see that it's completely janky. So that works. However, you can still see the low poly mesh underneath, which we don't want. So if we select the mesh, we go to its attributes. So you just want the shape attributes, and we're going to go down to the Renderman lobe, and we're going to scroll down until we get to subdivision surface, and we're going to set it to Catmull Clark, and then we can re-render that. And if I just show you the difference between the two, so there's the previous and there's the current. So you can see that by setting that, you get the smooth subdivision mesh while retaining the detail from the normal map. So you can see that all that detail's in there. Now, compared to the high poly mesh, which we can have a look at. So you see that the sort of high poly mesh looks a lot sharper. Obviously this is not still amazing. This is only at, I think the actual mesh I used was 7 million or something. So it's a little bit lower than I'd like, but you can see the detail is just not there. By comparison, like I said, normal maps are going to do a pretty good job. They're going to add a lot of nice surface variation, but they're not going to make it a high poly mesh. So you want to use displacement maps if you're looking for that extra high polygon count. If you combine them with a texture map, however, you will get a much better result. So I'll connect a texture map that I've just done quickly. Alright, Maya just crashed, so I've just rebuilt the scene really quickly. So you can see that with the texture map on there, I'm able to get a little bit more detail out of it, even with the low poly count. So you can get quite a good looking mesh if you are combining your normal maps with a texture map, and even better with a displacement map. But like I said, the normal map is going to give you a little bit more surface variation and detail. Texture map is going to give you your diffuse, obviously, which you can also use for a bit of occlusion, and then your displacement map is going to do the heavy lifting. So hopefully that explains everything. I know a couple of people having problems with normal maps, slightly different workflow than with Renderman 21, but hopefully that clears everything up for you guys. If you like the tutorial, make sure you click the like button so other people can find it, and if you haven't already, make sure you're subscribed, because I do a couple of tutorials every week or two for you guys for Renderman and other 3D softwares. Also, you can follow me on Instagram, link in the description to that, Facebook, if you wish to keep up to date when the tutorials come out. That's it for now though. Thank you very much for watching, and happy rendering.